Let me come up with a few special thank yous. First of all, to Mr. Speaker for hosting the ceremony once again in these splendid surroundings, and to our sponsors, KPMG, who have been hugely supportive of Patchwork's work, and in particular two partners who've been instrumental in helping us to engage underrepresented communities, Jonathan Holt and Siddiq Musa, and of course their colleague Rachel Hopcroft. A reminder of you all to tweet like crazy. Feel free to do that using hash MP of the Year awards and including at UK Patchwork, at UK Patchwork. Now these are groundbreaking awards, the only awards that MPs have been awarded for working well with underrepresented, deprived and minority communities. And this year is particularly important because we're also celebrating for the first time Patchworkers of the Year and Civil Servants of the Year. And we're also celebrating our 5th anniversary. Now, none of this could have happened without the support of our national board members, chaired by the indefatigable Shabir Rondari, who is over there. I saw him. A big round of applause for Shabir. And also our patrons, Mr. Speaker himself, and Baroness Tanni Grey-Thompson, John O'Brien, and John Pienaar, who you'll be hearing a bit more from in just a moment.
Thank you, Martin, and thank you for that plug. Sunday morning, 10 o'clock, 909-693 on AM. If you want to have a listening, do have a listening. It's a great pleasure to see you all here again, and to be here, and to be a patron of Patchwork. A pleasure and a privilege to do all of that, to get a chance to make one or two points, such as there is still a long way to go when it comes to the business of engaging underrepresented communities in our politics. While it's also true, we have come a distance over the years, certainly since the years that I've been here as a political journalist. I started in 1980 as a very young journalist with the Press Association. Then, looking down in the press gallery at the packed benches, Margaret Thatcher facing Jim Callaghan, and then Michael Foot, and then other successive Labour leaders. Black and brown faces were pretty thin on those green benches, I can tell you. I don't know how many of you ever watch a programme, a TV series called Midsummer Murders. It's a tale of everyday life and brutal murder in a beautiful, idyllic English village. Well, I can tell you, finding a black face in Midsummer Village was easier than finding a black face on the floor of the House of Commons in those days. But over the years, that changed. The numbers increased. In 87, there were 4. The following election, there were 6, then 9, 12, 15. In 2010, 27. And in the last general election, 41 ethnic minority members of Parliament. When you take into account the fact that the House of Commons is now made up at least to about a third of women, the House of Commons begins to look a bit more like the country that we live in, and that we go home to at the end of the day. So ground has been covered. There's a good deal more still to do. And we know about that gulf, the gap between our communities where we come here from and our politics is still pretty broad, demonstrated during the European election campaign in so many ways, and that referendum campaign, which, while both sides had plenty of sincerity and conviction driving those campaigns, it was still, for my money, the worst advertisement for national politics I have ever seen in my time as a political journalist. So much more still to be done. So the work of Patchwork in engaging those in the margin of our society, in the corner of the corner, has never been more important. The workshops, the master classes, the visits to party conferences in the autumn, events like this where we celebrate the work done by politicians represented among us in this room. It couldn't be more important. And tonight, we're giving out awards and we can celebrate that. There's nothing wrong with that. And Martin came from an industry where we are obsessive, fetishistic about giving each other awards. And so let's just enjoy it all tonight, congratulate and enjoy each other, because these are the good times. Thank you very much indeed.
John, thanks very much indeed. And, John works, and I used to work in an industry that was packed full of quite proper skepticism, but occasionally with a fair amount of not-so-proper cynicism. And it is really great to see the positive impact, as John says, that Patchwork are having on the whole environment here in the House of Commons and in communities right across the country. Now, for those of you who haven't been involved with these with these awards before. A brief word about how it all works. MPs were nominated by individuals, and they were then asked to provide information about their work with underrepresented, deprived and minorities communities. To this, and this is quite unique, to this was added further research by the Patchwork Foundation, and each whole dossier was provided to a team of independent judges who had no indication whatsoever of the MP's name, gender, party, or anything about them. And quite frankly, I don't know of any other award ceremony where that degree of anonymity ensures a really, really fair and honest result. And it is rather impressive. It is now my pleasure to introduce Enab Mohammed, a patchworker who has been through the program, has graduated, and she is going to talk about the skills that she has learned. So, Enab, over to you.
So from the time my grandparents first immigrated to the UK in the 60s to now, there's always been an expectation for people to assimilate into society. And despite their best efforts to hold firmly onto religious, cultural, and personal beliefs, there was, and still is, a great sense of anxiety. And it's unfortunate to say that this is a feeling I know too well. From feeling uncomfortable in cultural clothing to fearing racist abuse and discrimination, I, like many others in my generation, face an identity crisis of whether I'm Pakistani, Indian, English, British, European, everything put together or nothing at all. And now, with the increasing attack on minority communities post-Brexit, the question of who am I is only becoming more complicated. Being uncomfortable with my identity had usually meant that I doubted my abilities. I'd grown up feeling that because of my family's cultural beliefs and practices, I was somehow not part of the society that I had grown up and lived in. And for me, this is where the Patchwork Foundation has been so important. I first heard of the organisation through a friend on Facebook during the run-up to the general election of 2015. I was 19 years old and about to cast my first ever vote. I knew that before I voted, I wanted to be well-informed and at least attempt to understand what seemed like a very scary and complicated political system. So I decided to attend one of Patchwork's Get Involved sessions in Tooting with Sadiq Khan. Hearing his story was what made me realise that this complexity of who am I is actually a way to enhance your contribution to society rather than restrict it. Now as mayor, he shows my generation that you can be from an ethnic minority background, yet still be a mayor for all Londoners. The complexity of my identity makes me who I am, and I should be proud of that, regardless of not fitting into a particular category. Inspired and motivated, I then applied for Patchwork's unique masterclass program, which, through its exposure to leading politicians and experts in their fields, with many being from ethnic minority backgrounds, reasserted my growing realization of the unique contribution that we can all make because of our diverse backgrounds. It showed me that politics wasn't something that I should be scared of, it's something that empowers me. As well as, of course, developing confidence, networking skills, and communicating skills, one of the most important developments for me throughout my patchwork journey has been simply being able to speak to politicians. I think I'd always felt intimidated and too disengaged and underestimated myself a lot. And by providing spaces for young people, though, Patchwork has gotten rid of that misconception for me, being able to talk to MPs, ask them questions, which means actually I can now stand here and speak to you all today. Patchwork has taught me that we as individuals have a duty. We have an obligation to the society we live in. We have the duty to contribute in any positive way that we can, and our richly diverse backgrounds enhance this contribution. We should celebrate diversity rather than hide it away. And this is what is so great about Patchwork. The time and effort that the executive team voluntarily put into organising the programme demonstrates their very message of duty and contribution that the organisation believes in. The way in which they act both as mentors and facilitators as well as, of course, balancing their own personal lives and studies, is what inspires me and pushes me further. Because of all that I have learnt through Patchwork and the team, I'm now an active member of a political party in my local constituency and university campus. The Patchwork Foundation has shown me that I am a piece of patchwork. I am British, I am Muslim, I am a woman, I am all these things and much more. We are all patchwork.
And I'm wonderful. You may actually end up coming back here in a few years' time as Prime Minister. Who knows? I mean, everything is possible. The Patchwork Foundation's unique masterclass program gives young leaders from underrepresented, deprived and minority communities of all backgrounds the chance to engage dynamically with experts in the political field. Participants on the 9-month-long program have exclusive access to experts in intimate settings where they have the chance to learn, question, and develop their knowledge and skills. Masterclass topics include political campaigning, negotiation, coalition building, international relations, interviewing skills, and policy making, and that's just the start. There are many more as well. Previous masterclass tutors have included Linton Crosby, campaign director for the Conservative Party's general election campaign in 2015, who threw in a private tour of Downing Street for the young people. And graduates this year are, and they are around us here, so stand ready to give them a big round of applause. Priscilla Tiga, Mo Randery, Amira Moden, Courtney Smith, Sally Thomas, Imran Haq, Sarah Tahir, James Mutinda, Fatima Chowdhury, Maria Fernandez, Jordana Zeta, Enab Mohammed, who we just heard from, Sally Kirby, Ali Aslam, Kieran Jones, Claire Edington, Yolanda Kiseni, Takiwa Danso, Kieran Angel, Grace Adeyemi, Shanaz Yasmin, Tabassum Baig, Ben Shapiro, Abdullah Zaman, Usama Kawisa, Ryan Azmi, and Shola Brown. And let's give them all a huge round of applause. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we have just two short speeches before we get on to the awards. The first one is from someone without whom none of this ceremony would be possible. It's the Speaker, the Right Honourable John Bercow, who has graciously given us once again, I think you've been doing it for 5 years, John, haven't you? This is the 5th year, and it's absolutely terrific that you have allowed us to come into this. I think I once called it your great emporium on the hill, which is, to quote from Dylan Thomas, but it is a magnificent edifice, and we are honoured to be here for the ceremony. So over to you.
Martin, thank you for the warmth and generosity entirely characteristic of you, of that welcome. But more particularly, friends and colleagues, I know you will join me in offering heartfelt and fulsome thanks to Martin for all that he has done and continues to do, and doubtless will go on doing, in support of a cause which is as dear to him as it is to you and to me. Everybody knows, Martin, that you're passionate about the work of the Patchwork Foundation, to which you give unstintingly both of your time and of your experience. And the mission of the foundation has a real piquancy in an age in which there is a pervasive cynicism about politics and politicians, and yet when we know that the alternatives to politics scarcely bear contemplation. Only last week, my friends, I had the great honor of speaking at Sheffield University, giving the Bernard Crick annual lecture. Well, some people in this room may recall Bernard Crick, Professor Bernard Crick, who became Sir Bernard Crick. Bernard Crick was a quite outstanding politics academic. He devoted his professional life to the study, teaching, and analysis of politics, and he wrote a number of great tomes, one of which was called In Defense of Politics. And there was much to it, but a core part of his thesis was that although people, even at the time of his writing, were sometimes inclined to use the word politics in a pejorative or disobliging way, politics was then and is now the means by which we arbitrate between conflicting points of view. We seek to reconcile different and sometimes conflicting interests, and we try to resolve, to use a similar word, conflicts between people, between communities, between opposing viewpoints. And we do so, of course, peacefully, because that is the essence of politics. The alternatives, really, which don't warrant any time at all, are either to have an all-powerful state to which no alternative viewpoint is allowed to be expressed, or we have a kind of Hobbesian war of nature in which people are just fighting each other all the time, and there is something similar or akin to a civil war taking place. So a society that has politics is a society that has recognized the need for organization and for systems and for mechanisms of arbitration and resolution and consensus building. So you won't be surprised to know that I am pro the Patchwork Foundation for the magnificent work it does, and I am unashamedly, for all our mistakes and all our inadequacies and all the criticisms that can be leveled at us, pro politicians and politics. And I don't think we should spend all of our time, or even very much of our time, highlighting our shortcomings. There will always be people who are very happy to do that. And actually, it's the easiest way, Martin, John, parliamentary colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, to get a cheap round of applause to rubbish the politician on the panel. It's an easy and cheap way to do so. And sometimes it's justified, but very often it isn't. And so I want to celebrate the work of the foundation for a start, because I think that work in seeking to facilitate and to encourage the participation in politics of underrepresented, deprived and minority communities is as salient today as it has ever been. Despite 5 years of achievement, there is much work still to do, and the glint of missionary ambition, I think, is still, Martin, in your eye and in the eyes of the trustees of the foundation. I want to pay tribute to all of those who work voluntarily in support of the foundation, who go on its courses, who benefit from its programs, one of whom so eloquently now at university we heard from only a few moments ago, because there is a skill, there is a training, there is an equipment to be learned and honed and nurtured in being a good campaigner, in being a good politician, in being a good activist, in being a good communicator. It isn't something that just happens overnight. So thank you for taking an interest. In a very real personal sense, Martin, I'm very grateful, because people from the Patchwork Foundation very generously came to my own constituency during the election, not exhorted to do so by me. They very much offered to do so, and they brought a real dynamism and vitality to our work, and their presence on the streets and their willingness not just to talk but to listen and to hear people's points of view was spontaneously appreciated by constituents of mine, whether they were voting for me or not, whether they were voting at all. It was something new and rather different to see a well-organized, deeply enthusiastic, and very lively group of at least 20 people racing back and forth on the streets of my constituency one Saturday afternoon. They could perfectly well have been doing something else, but they didn't. They chose to do that, and I knew they did it in a great many other colleagues' constituencies as well. So thank you to them, and I celebrate that contribution. I also want, colleagues, and I hope I can be forgiven for doing this, to thank my parliamentary colleagues who engage with the work of the foundation and give it ongoing support. There are many people here who've been doing so for some years, and that's hugely appreciated, senior and experienced colleagues. But one of the things that really gives me great encouragement, my friends, is to see and hear and be able to bear testimony myself to the sheer industry and energy and commitment of the new intake of members of Parliament across the political spectrum. Constantly new members who are active, who are making a difference, who are getting involved, who are taking up causes prompted by e-petitions or local activity or initiative or constituency representation of one form or another. I see Antoinette Sandbach, who's brought a real passion to the Chamber and focused on issues near and dear to her and to her Edisbury constituents in a way that won't be forgotten and has won respect. I see in my line of vision Heidi Allen, who's been an extremely articulate and sometimes very outspoken new member of Parliament. And I don't say that in a pejorative way. That's a really good thing for her constituency and for the House of Commons. And Kirsty Blackman from the Scottish National Party, I know I'm busily looking around in the spirit of speaker impartiality for a new Labour entrant to the House of Commons since 2015. I'm sure there is such present. Jess Phillips. Well, there's hardly been anybody more active than Jess Phillips, with her voice, with her votes on the media, in every possible way. We've heard Jess's thoughts, and I'm thrilled about that. That's why I've just asked Jess recently to serve on a panel that I've set up to try to make a better, more gender-sensitive Parliament, because I think that she'll do a great job in support of that work. So there is much to celebrate, and I'm much more interested in accentuating the positive than looking to find fault. It's very easy to knock. We are all flawed, and we've got to ask, how can we do better and improve on our work? But there's much good that's going on, both by members of Parliament and by external organisations. And the Patchwork Foundation has really established itself, and it deserves huge credit for what it does. And politicians and the media sometimes have a difficult and tense relationship, and that's a good thing in a free society. There'll always be a degree of creative tension, but credit where credit is due, not just for his professional competence as a journalist, but for his commitment to the work of the Patchwork Foundation. To John Pienaar, I say a very warm thank you, John, for what you do and the time you make available and the insights you're willing to share with people who are coming after you, either wanting careers in journalism or indeed in the practice of politics and the statecraft skill set that requires. So that is enough for me. You know that we're going very shortly to proceed to the awards. I am now looking to Martin for inspiration. I don't know whether he thinks I should go straight to Patchworker of the Year award or whether I'm supposed to go somewhere else.
I did once, I was comparing an industrial award ceremony in the Grosvenor House Hotel, and Margaret Beckett, when she was Secretary of State, was, I had to introduce her and then go up to resume from the same podium, the proceedings, as it were. And when she lifted up her speech, she took the whole of my notes with her when she went back down. So I'm enormously grateful to you, Mr. Speaker, for leaving my notes here in place on the podium. That is much appreciated. There is just one person who we need to hear from before we get on with the award ceremony, and it is another person without whom this ceremony could not take place, and that is the incredible support that we have had from KPMG, and in particular from a KPMG partner, Siddiq Musa. So, Siddiq, over to you.
What Martin hasn't told you is that I'm from Manchester, and in Manchester you regard us as the city that's at the centre of the Northern Powerhouse. We in the North believe that we are the UK's real powerhouse. And the way that we see the world from Manchester is very much the way that football fans often see the Premier League table. Manchester sitting at the top, looking down at the rest of the country. Although as a Blackburn fan, I haven't been looking at football tables that often over the last few weeks. And keeping the football analogy going, the goings-on in this place far outdo the unpredictability of Leicester City winning the Premier League last season. So let's turn to tonight. And I just want to start off by saying that KPMG are very proud of our association with Patchwork. This is the third year in which we have sponsored these awards. The work that they do in encouraging all parts of the community to get involved in the political process is very valuable in building vibrant and successful communities. Communities where people, especially young people, feel as though, or should feel as though, they've got a real stake. And I also want to congratulate the MPs that have received and will receive the awards tonight. They do really great work within their communities and give a voice to the underrepresented. And the work that Patchwork and these MPs do is really important for business. Without vibrant communities, without having successful communities within which to operate, businesses like KPMG themselves cannot be successful. So, therefore, working with Patchwork is not just the right thing to do, it's actually underpinned by sound business principles. And that's why our senior partner, Simon Collins, recently set out in the media a manifesto for doing business. And within that, a central theme was social mobility, and particularly the importance of a career or access for all to a career in business and the paying of a real living wage. He said very much that that was key over the next few years to having a UK that was both economically and politically balanced and stable. And I would like to think that we at KPMG do more than just talk about social mobility. We do something about it. So a few years ago, we introduced a program. It's called KPMG 360, an apprenticeship program, which for the first time, young school leavers who cannot or will not go to university can access a career at KPMG. Many of these young people that have joined KPMG, none of their family have ever been to university, yet now they get paid a competitive salary, they can access professional exams, and actually build a career at a prestige employer like KPMG. And it's ironic that someone like me, who never went to university, joined KPMG many years ago, led large teams, yet for 15 years, we only allowed people with a degree to join that team. We recognize that unless we tap into all the talents within the community, we actually limit our own business success. On the living wage itself, KPMG is a real pioneer. We're the only UK organisation to actually receive a commendation from the Living Wage Foundation. Not only have we for many years paid our staff the living wage, but we insist that any contractor that wants to do business with KPMG pays their staff the same. And last week, Jeremy Hunt and Damien Green visited the KPMG headquarters at Canary Wharf and talked to our disabled colleagues about how they are able to build a successful career within professional services. So we're proud at KPMG about our work and about our journey to become an inclusive employer. We can do better, but as I keep saying, it's the right thing to do. If we tap into all the talents within our community, we're a more successful business. And that is why we value the work that we do with Patchwork and value our association with them. Thank you.
On to Civil Servant of the Year award. This goes to Ed Whiting. He is the former private secretary to the Prime Minister and was one of our Downing Street tutors for the Masterclass programme. So the first Civil Servant of the Year award goes to Ed.
Thank you very much for the award. I am overwhelmed and humbled because us civil servants don't normally get awards, and it's an enormous privilege. To say one thing and say it to the patch workers who've blown me away 2 years in a row in Downing Street, which I've now left, and that's why I don't wear a tie anymore. I work in a foundation. Keep it up. We need you. So we need you to be MPs. We need you to be prime ministers. But we also need you to be civil servants. You have amazing energy. You have an amazing sort of commitment to objectivity, to thinking about arguments, to asking the right questions, and I've experienced that. So thank you for the inspiration you gave to me, but please keep going, and I hope to see some of you in Downing Street at some point. Thank you very much.
We will move on to another Civil Servant of the Year, who is Melanie Dawes, who is permanent secretary, this is big cheese stuff actually, she's permanent secretary of the Department for Communities and Local Government and was one of the tutors for the Masterclass programme. Melanie.
Well, thank you so much. I am really honoured to receive an award from Patchwork, which is such a fantastic organisation, and I admire all the work that you do. And can I just say particularly how much I enjoyed spending time with the young leaders on the programme itself. You are inspiring. You are inspiring for your curiosity, your commitment to changing the world around you, for your generosity of spirit. So thank you so much, and I wish you all the very best.
And the Newcomer People's Choice Award goes to Jess Phillips, MP for Birmingham Yardley. Jess, are you being joined? Jess has been joined for the picture by her constituent Patricia Coyle.
Wow, it is a total pleasure, and I want to say a massive thank you to Patchwork, who have been out and done work in my constituency, have been here to meet me in Parliament, and the energy and enthusiasm of the young people involved has been completely and utterly mesmerising to me. I think that when I was elected, all I wanted to do was have a go at trying to make people outside think that people in here were a little bit like them, and I think that I suppose my approach to politics is just to be who I am and say what I think, and I hope that it stops the sort of reverence of thinking that there is an established order that means that people can't get in here, because if I got in here, anyone can get in here. So thanks very much.
Now the Newcomer SNP MP of the Year runner-up, who's receiving a certificate, is Neil Gray, MP for Adrian Shotts. And next we have the Newcomer SNP MP of the Year award. It goes to Kirsty Blackman from Aberdeen North.
I'm not what politicians used to look like, what politicians usually look like. And, you know, I'm not from a kind of very affluent background, and I think that we're getting better at that in the House of Commons, but we need to do more. I know that Patchwork are trying to increase what they do in Scotland, and I'm really pleased about that. And anything that I can do and anything my colleagues can do to help is we're there for that, because we totally recognise what you guys do and how useful and good it is. Politicians are more accessible than ever before. If you haven't met your local MP or your local MSP in Scotland and you want to, then give us a shout. You know, contact us on Facebook, contact us on Twitter. You know, you should be holding us to account. I know you do. And come along and ask us the difficult questions. I and my colleagues, and Jess is much the same in this, will not stop fighting until Parliament looks more like the country looks. So we will keep trying to remove those barriers, and we need you guys to tell us what they are so that we can make sure that we're breaking them down.
And the other party's People's Choice Award goes to Angus Robertson, MP for Moray.
Can I just make an obvious point, which is we're all a minority in one way or another, and I think it's worth reminding ourselves that we've got many things still to do to make sure that whether the British Parliament and other parliaments and assemblies around the UK reflect all of the nations and regions of the UK. I'm delighted as a Westminster leader of the SNP to represent the gayest parliamentary party in the world. Fact, that the Scottish Parliament is the gayest parliament in the world, that we have amongst the highest percentage of female representatives elected to office. All of that is tremendous, but we have much work to do. We're a country that doesn't have a tremendously large BME community, but we're very proud to have had the first Scots Asian elected to the Scottish Parliament, the first female BME parliamentarian elected to Westminster. But that's just a start. We've got much more to do, and these kind of awards should inspire all of us in the SNP and colleagues in all of the parties, because I know we're all committed to try and sort out the gaps that exist, and you're the inspiration to all of you who have come through the Patchwork programme. Please do us all a favour by recommending it to all of your friends and all the communities that you come to, so that the next generation of young folks from different communities across the UK have the experience that you have done, and then this place will be a very different place in about 20 years' time, and the sooner the better. Thank you very much.
We now come to the newcomer Labour MP of the Year, and the runner-up is Paula Sherriff from Dewsbury and Mirfield. And the newcomer Labour MP of the Year award, that goes to Stephen Kinnock from Aberavon.
Well, 1 minute time limit here. That's even stricter than Mr. Speaker is in the chamber. So I just wanted to thank the Patchwork Foundation for the fantastic work that you do. It's so inspiring to see the classes that you take on working in the constituency, on policy making, on drafting a speech. Actually, I was wondering if I might be able to participate in that class myself sometime, but you do such amazing work. I also wanted to thank the people of Aberavon for giving me the privilege of being their MP. There is no greater honour or privilege to speak out on their behalf in this place. I also wanted to thank my wife, Hella, who supports me so much and is standing right there. And I suppose I'd very much like to thank the Speaker for lending us his wonderful premises here this evening. But one thing I would leave you with is take a look at the paintings around these walls and then think what you young people represent. And let's make sure that a few years from now there's some different paintings on those walls. Thank you very much.
We now have Labour MP of the Year runner-up. It is Lillian Greenwood from Nottingham South. Labour MP of the Year. David Lammy, MP for Tottenham.
I don't think I've ever won an award in my life. Actually, I have won a few elections. But this is really wonderful and very, very special. It's special because I am a mere backbencher these days. I have not had a front bench position in my party, by choice, I've got to say, since we lost in 2010. So I hope this is a big up for backbenchers. And I hope it means that you can actually make a difference as a backbencher. So I'm very, very grateful to Patchwork for recognising that. And there's, I think, two things probably that have been important that I've tried to do. One is to hold the BBC to account on diversity, and we've got a public duty on diversity. So hopefully there'll be a few more black and brown people on TV and behind the camera over the next period, and I'm really pleased about that, and I think Patchwork and young people out there will be as well. And the second thing is I was very honoured this year to be asked by the Prime Minister to lead a review into what we can do about the problem of, and this is working across party, which I also think is an important theme, about the overrepresentation of black and ethnic minorities in the criminal justice system. So thank you very, very much for recognising that work and giving me this. Thank you.
And now we move on to Labour People's Choice Award. That goes to Dawn Butler from Brent Central. And I think, am I right, Dawn, you're being joined for the photo by your constituent, Susan Grace. Is Susan there?
Thank you so much. Yes, Susan is a deputy head teacher in a local school who is always really quite eager and open, and if we need young people to get involved, she's always an advocate of that. So exactly what Patchwork does. And I want to thank Patchwork for the Patchwork Foundation for this award. It's very special what you do for young people. When I look at the young people and see so many who look like me, I wish I had the Patchwork Foundation when I was younger. you don't come into politics to get awards. You hardly make friends, let alone get awards. But it feels really good when you get one, I can tell you. And just an hour or so ago, I was kind of crying my eyes out in Parliament because we're remembering Jo Cox, because she was the new person who's taken over. Tracy had done her maiden speech, and it reminds me just how much politicians do in this place and how little sometimes we appreciate the work that they do. And I must also say, to be given this award by Mr. Speaker as well in his house is also very special, because Mr. Speaker has tirelessly worked to change the optics of this place. When you see Reverend Rose every morning as the first African Caribbean woman chaplain of the House, you know that was Mr. Speaker who did that. The first Muslim doorkeeper is Mr. Speaker. So he's left his legacy, and I think we must all strive, absolutely. And I think we must all strive to leave our legacy in this place. And it's really hard when you don't see many people like you or from your background. I didn't go to university in this place. It's really hard to struggle. And race is always put at the bottom of the agenda. And we have to fight to make sure that's moved up the agenda. And so to the Patchwork Foundation, thank you so much for everything you do. And thank you for this award. Thank you.
And now the newcomer Conservative MP of the Year runner-up. And we have two, a dead heat. Joe Churchill from Bury St Edmunds and William Ragg from Hazelgrove. And now we have the newcomer Conservative MP of the Year. She is Heidi Allen from South Cambridgeshire. And Heidi, I don't know if your constituent James Sheard is joining you. Is James? Yep, and you come.
It's interesting, I've been listening to the comments of some of my fellow colleagues tonight, and they're absolutely right. I've never known a job where you start so low down in people's estimations. Most jobs, you come in and you're new and you start at level 0 and people wait to see if you're good or you're bad. But at this job, you come in at -100 before you've even opened your mouth the first time. And I have to tell you, it can be very, very lonely sometimes. Particularly when you're doing something that goes against your party, it can be incredibly lonely. But I have the best team in the world, in Natalie and Paula, and Nicola can't be here. I've got my fabulous husband, Phil. And it's people like James who have opened my eyes to communities, disabled communities, people with learning difficulties that I had no idea about. And if that's the job, allowing me to be the voice for those people, then I tell you what, it's the best job in the world. And thank you very, very much indeed.
And the Conservative MP of the Year runner-up award goes to Maria Miller from Basingstoke. And the Conservative MP of the Year award goes to Greg Clark from Tunbridge Wells.
It's a fantastic privilege and honour to have this award. And I just wanted, in thanking the foundation, to pay tribute to the practical work and the confidence that the Patchwork gives to young people. I remember my first political meeting when I was a teenager, and I found it pretty intimidating. I thought if I turned up, they're going to talk about very erudite policy matters, and I'm going to be rumbled as not really being ready for all this. Actually, they talked about delivering leaflets, needless to say. And then when I went canvassing for the first time, this was pretty intimidating. I thought they're going to ask lots of questions about party policy. They never ask questions about party policy. They just want to move on. And I think the meeting the young people of Patchwork and seeing just the ease and the facility with which, after spending time with each other and being introduced to politicians of all types, these apparently these hurdles that seem to be difficult to stride over suddenly become much less intimidating. And the conversations that I've had with the patchworkers over the years have shown me what enthusiasm, what talent, and what potential there is there that is actively being realized. So it is a great privilege for me to receive this award, but an opportunity for me on behalf of all colleagues here to thank the patchworkers and the Foundation for everything they're doing for our democracy. Thank you very much indeed.
The Conservative People's Choice Award, and that goes to the MP for Hastings and Rye, Amber Rudd.
Just to say thank you very much indeed for nominating me for this award. I'm really honoured. I know that Patchwork does fantastic work encouraging people from diverse backgrounds to get involved in politics, to participate. And I just think that's so important in our democracy to make sure that everybody has a shot, that everybody sees some of the crazy, zany, extraordinary things that we get up to in politics. And perhaps it will light something in some of you young people's minds to get involved yourself. And you'd be very welcome. So thank you very much for this great award.
Now we come to our three main awards, and I don't think there is going to be any surprise at all about the overall People's Choice Award. Dawn spoke about how she had been moved to tears in the Commons this afternoon by the tributes to Jo Cox. And Jo was clearly the overall People's Choice Award, not only for what she did, but for the sacrifice that she personally made in such a dramatic and deeply sad way. And the award is going to be collected on her behalf by her great friend and colleague, Stephen Kinnock.
Thank you very much. And Brendan was going to collect the award, Brendan Cox, but he wasn't able to be with us this evening, so he's asked me to do the honour of collecting on his behalf. And I thought I'd maybe just tell you a little bit about my friend Jo, who I shared an office with from the moment that we started in Parliament together. I'll never forget how she'd come bounding into the office in her cycling gear, grabbing her clothes and shouting something over her shoulder about her latest project or campaign. My dad called her a day star, and she was. She believed that people are all the same. We all laugh, we all cry, we all love, we all worry, and we all hope. Every person deserves to live a life that's filled with joy and dignity. She believed that who you are depended on who we all are. So we better work together and for each other in our communities, across our country, and around the world. To engage with others is a sign of strength, not of weakness. And she believed that we must confront our challenges with honesty, compassion, and courage. From economic suffering and fear in the UK to the humanitarian disaster of the Syrian refugees caught in a conflict they did not create. A quote she often used, "All it takes for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing." Well, Jo could never be accused of doing nothing. She lived her beliefs. She lived her life to the full. Let us all here, regardless of party, honor her by working together to bring our country out from the shadow of fear, hate, and division, by bringing the light of love, compassion, and solidarity to bear. Qualities that bring so much more joy, as Jo proved, every day. It begins with reflection on whether we live our values when life is tough, as well as when it's convenient. But it must be about action, in word and in deed, to do what is best for our country and our common humanity, which is usually also the best for ourselves in the end. Let us establish a public discourse that allows all of us to recognize in each other's eyes what Jo saw in every person she met, our common humanity, our brilliant, beautiful Jo.
For those very moving words. And our second of the three main awards goes to Overall Newcomer MP of the Year, and that's Marie Black.
Thank you very much for this award. It's been quite a strange year and a half. In fact, my dad was telling me that he went into a school recently and he happened to mention me, and he says the woman nearly had a fit and dragged him into the staff room and went, "You won't believe who this man's daughter is." And this poor guy's sitting eating his breakfast and he's like, "I don't know." And he says, "She's dead famous." And the guy's like, "I don't know. Our surname's Black." And he goes, "Silla." So thank you for spelling the name right on the award. No, in all seriousness, this is actually very humbling and much appreciated. And I appreciate Lorna taking the time to come down here, because Lorna herself has had to be frank, a horrible experience of the system as we know it just now. And quite honestly, that's the cases that we deal with most often. And I know it was said today in the chamber, and I've said it in the past, but if there's one thing that I can urge everybody in this room to do, it's to go and see that film, I, Daniel Blake. Because if you want to know what it's like to come or to live in a disadvantaged point of society, that film shows you what the reality is. But I want to thank Patchwork for all the work they do, and I'm glad to hear that they'll be doing more work in Scotland, shining a light on the communities that quite often are left in the darkness. But the last thing I want to say is, where my name might be on this bit of glass, the real heroes behind this who deserve all the credit are the wonderful office staff that I have. Some of whom are here tonight. They do an incredible job, and as Liz always puts it, they do the work and I get the credit. So I want to give them some. So thanks very much.
And our final award, the Overall MP of the Year, goes to someone who has gradually worked their way up through this award system right to the very top. It goes to Justine Greening.
Well, first of all, thanks for sticking around, actually. The votes are gone and there are still MPs here, which is quite unusual, but I think it tells you how important the Patchwork event, and more importantly, all the work that Patchwork does, is to all of us. I speak as someone who had absolutely zero plans to go into politics or to be an MP. No one in my family had even joined a political party, let alone thought of standing as a councillor or as an MP. And for me, the work that Patchwork does is just brilliant at giving encouragement and confidence to a brand new generation of perhaps the people who'd be least likely maybe to think about going into politics and parliament, to give it a go. And I think the work that you do in, first of all, giving me the chance and the fantastic opportunity to meet so many of these just fantastic, amazing young people, is not only great for us, but I think hopefully we can give you a sense that actually somebody needs to come in and do these important roles of speaking up for their local community. Some of us end up being ministers and secretaries of state. We're only human, but actually they're roles that can really make a massive difference to people's lives. And if you feel like you want to do something with your life that actually doesn't just work for you, but works for your community and moves things on for those people that you represent, then I personally think that coming into this place, whether you're an MP or you're a councillor, I think being part of the democratic system is one of the most important things that we can all do. And our democracy is such a precious thing, but it works best when we're all part of it and when we're all in it and involved. And the work that Patchwork does, I think, over the years, I mean, I've seen it grow and really develop, and it's absolutely critical at the moment to make sure that this country is somewhere where whoever you are, whatever community you're growing up in, you have a sense that this is your place. And it belongs to all of us, and all of our voices count exactly the same. So I think for all of the MPs who are here, I'm sure I speak for all of us, and you've heard from lots of colleagues about how much we value the work that Patchwork does. But for all of the patchworkers who are here, I think you too can play a role in having a ripple effect for Patchwork and what it's trying to achieve by being some role models in your own communities and with your own friends, to encourage them maybe to think differently as we're encouraging you about what our democracy is about, but also what you can offer to it. So congratulations to all of the patchworkers and to Patchwork Foundation. What you do, I think, is truly transformational, and it's a privilege to have got this award tonight. Thank you.
Well, in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, let me just say that Patchwork is clearly proving that our work is now starting to make a real difference. Our young people, as we've heard, are taking up a growing range of jobs as civil servants in the Cabinet Office, in the Ministry of Defence, or in City Hall. They're working in various political offices in Parliament and as part of the recent mayoral and EU referendum campaigns. They are joining and becoming active in the political party of their choice, or they are simply becoming outstanding members of the public, interested in and engaged with what their communities have to offer and the various ways in which their communities can be improved. I remember reading a quote on I think it was on the back page of the very first Nelson Mandela Children's Fund annual report, and it went something like this: the future is not some place we are going to, but one we are creating. The paths to it are made, not found, and the process of making them changes both the maker and the destinations. And I hope you'll agree with me that Patchwork has, in its last 5 years, been a very powerful catalyst for the right kind of change in our society, and there is much more work to come, and I know all of you will play your part in that. And thank you all for coming along, both winners and those who are simply observing, to our award ceremony tonight. Thank you.